Are you making a mill a month mistake? I'm not making a mill or more.
I'm making much more.
I need the max win.
This is the world of stake. If you spend enough time on the internet, inevitably, you'll run into their logo. They've sponsored the F1, the UFC, Drake. They open their own streaming platform to compete with Amazon. They even pay to get their logo on meme videos posted to TikTok. But how? Behind the flashy sponsorships are lawsuits, shady advertising practices, and a lot of people who lost a lot of money. This video is not gambling advice or a promo. It's a story about how a crypto casino managed to take over the internet as one massive billboard, as CoffeeZilla put it, to the point that it feels almost impossible to stop. But to understand how we got here in the first place, we have to go way back to two kids playing RuneScape. The year was 2011, around the time I got into RuneScape, and players had just discovered a new use for an item called the Dice Bag. It let players roll a random number between 1 and 100. It's never meant to be used for gambling, but when the community figured out it could, they went nuts. Big clans took over the busiest area in the game, the Grand Exchange, and offered to double people's money if they rolled over 55. Of course, there was a catch. You had to trade your gold to another player, the host, who would roll the dice and trade you back double if you won. Now, RuneScape is full of scamming, so you can imagine how that went down. So to build trust, large clans formed that would sell ranks. The higher the rank, the larger the bet the host could take. The idea behind these clans was that if the host scammed you, the clan would pay you back from what they paid for their rank. And with every 15-year-old hooked on gambling in RuneScape, it turned out it was massively profitable to run legitimate gambling clans, both for the clan owners and those hosting. With the dice game, they had a 5% house edge, and by 2012, many of these gambling hosts had become famous within the community because the big clans were getting very creative with advertising.
This is a chainsaw message for you. Dragon Dice, the oldest dicing clan in RuneScape.
Sponsoring YouTubers, spamming in-game, hosting live streams, massive drop parties, paying player moderators to mute opposing clans. It was clear they were making a ton of real-life money because it was like every 19-year-old host was buying a new BMW that year. That's because RuneScape Gold has always been traded for real money on secondary markets. I think it's more liquid than any other video game currency. And like the other teenagers on RuneScape watching this unfold, Ed Craven and Bijan Tirani had also been sucked in. Ed was a 15-year-old tech enthusiast from Melbourne, while Bijan was 16 from New York. The two had met online and bonded over their shared obsession with gambling and RuneScape, even started hosting themselves. But it was bad timing, because the game's creators, Jagex, they couldn't have gambling in a game rated for kids. At first, they tried to stop it by removing the dice bag, but players just found a new item, mithril seeds, which, when planted, grew a random colored flower. Players started using these to gamble on a game they would dub Flower Poker and Hot and Cold. When that eventually got patched too, they moved on to toy horses that spat out random chat messages when used. Basically, every time Jagex removed one way to gamble, players just found another random number generator disguised as an item until that too got banned. So Ed and Bijan started making their money in the one place Jagex actually allowed gambling, the duel arena, where players could stake their gold against each other in one-on-one fights. Ed uploaded this entire series of videos documenting his rise in wealth from staking. In one, he opens 28 Christmas crackers, the rarest item in the game, then worth around $10,000 each. But staking wasn't truly profitable. The odds were 50-50. There was no house edge, like in player-run gambling, which guaranteed a profit over the long run. Worse, by this time in 2013, Jagex had done a great job at banning player-run games of chance, so if they wanted long-term gains, they needed a new way. Ed and Bijan had an idea. They had likely discovered the rising popularity of cryptocurrency from the secondary markets for buying and selling RuneScape Gold. Enter Bitcoin. At the time, Bitcoin was trading between $110 and $130, just recovering from its first mainstream crash where it had plummeted from $260. Most of the world still had no idea what it was just magic internet money used for nerds and drug dealers, but Ed and Bijan had a crazy idea. What if they brought RuneScape Dicing back, but online, through a website using Bitcoin as the currency? It was perfect. There was a bunch of RuneScape players hungry to continue dicing, but it was banned from the game, and Bitcoin, like RuneScape Gold, world could move fast and freely. There was no banks to get in the way, and unlike real money, it couldn't be charged back if the bettor lost. And so Ed, at the time 18 years old and Bijan 20, created a new website called PrimeDice. They advertised it as the future of Bitcoin gambling, and boy was it the Wild West. To get players, they launched an aggressive guerrilla marketing campaign on the legendary Bitcoin talk forums. Bijan, operating under the handle Stunna, became a fixture of the community, paying users to wear PrimeDice signatures and practically spamming the forum with giveaways to manufacture hype. It was similar to what they did in the RuneScape space. The best part is, it worked. They claimed to take 1 million in bets on their very first day. But the learning curve, it was brutal, and one famous incident, a user known as Hufflepuff found an exploit in their code. They thought he was a legitimate big bettor, a whale, for months, but they discovered all too late, after he had won more than 2,400 bitcoins worth over $1 million, that he had been using an exploit. With this news, Bijan messaged him on Bitcoin Talk, demanded the coins back. But Hufflepuff wasn't too happy about that, and it turns out that their developer had improperly patched the glitch, and so in response, Hufflepuff created a new account named Robinhood and proceeded to rapidly win 2,000 additional bitcoins using a workaround. Most companies would have folded, but Ed and Bijan, they patched the bug, took it on the chin, ate the loss, and doubled down. Pioneered features like provably fair algorithms that let users verify they weren't being cheated. By 2016, they felt confident that the bugs had been ironed out. This meant that they could truly scale. But at the same time, the competition was growing more sophisticated. People saw the success of Bitcoin casinos and they were emulating. So it was time for Ed and Bijan to kick things up a notch. In mid-2016, Bijan traveled to Australia for a gambling conference in Sydney, planning to stay for only a couple of weeks, till he decided to make the quite impulsive decision of never returning home to his New York apartment. See, PrimeDice was getting some criticism. Crypto was too easy to gamble with, kids could get on the website, country restrictions could be circumvented, and at the same time, they knew there was a whole pile more money to be made if they could allow traditional payment systems on the site. But this would involve creating a new company structure with a different gambling license. So Bijan and Ed opened an office in Melbourne, founded EasyGo Gaming with the objective of creating proprietary gaming technology. That's when they developed the so-called Stake Engine, a name inspired by none other than staking at the RuneScape Duel Arena.
Is that where you got that name or no?
Yeah, of course.
It was, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of an irony too, because the Duel Arena has actually since been removed from RuneScape. Players push back on having gambling in the game, realizing for those that became addicted, it can ruin their entire life. Really rare to see today on the internet with how prevalent online gambling has become. In part because in August of 2017, Ed and Bijan used EasyGo Engine to launch their new gambling website, stake.com. Operated by Medium Rare NV in Curacao under a Curacao e-gaming license.
Correct. This is their headquarters, bro, on Google Maps. This is where...
Give me a second here.
No, this is important. This is where Stake Casino's located, you guys.
Oh my god.
A pretty controversial choice, considering then it only costed a few $1,000s a year to get a license and does not render the site legal in all jurisdictions. But it didn't matter. They didn't need it to. Stake at its launch was still a crypto-only online casino. They had the advantage of their customers having excellent knowledge of how to circumvent any kind of restrictions so they could keep gambling. And the timing couldn't be better. Bitcoin began its generational 2017 bull run, and Stake benefited from the rapid growth of the crypto market. In the founder's own words, Stake.com was made for a generation that was impatient and wants things to be clear and fast. It took seconds to sign up, withdrawals were instant, and every transaction was clear on the blockchain. At first, the platform only had a small number of its own original games, but quickly added slots, table games, blackjack, roulette, and a full sportsbook. As they grew in size, they began expanding into more regulated markets and fiat payments through separate entities and localized licenses. Of course, this was all complemented by the classic dice game coming from the RuneScape days. But the real engine behind Stake's growth was their affiliate program and VIP system. Its affiliate program didn't just pay people like creators for driving signups to the website. It paid them directly based on how much their referrals bet in perpetuity, directly incentivizing them to try to encourage their audience to gamble higher amounts for longer sessions so they would get more kickback. And when a whale joined the site, Stake has something that all casinos do, a VIP system that is meant to retain them. But theirs has faced criticism for how it treats their biggest losers. Rather than helping them stop, critics say that it uses bonuses, perks, and personal hosts to keep them gambling. Something ABC News reported on when a player who had lost more than $180,000 asked asked for his account to be closed, but his VIP host instead encouraged him to wait for new bonuses to come in so he could continue betting. The article describes how these inducements lured him back after multiple attempts to stop, and how he continued gambling even after trying to self-exclude. But all this alone still wasn't enough to make a crypto casino empire. The biggest expense for gambling websites, by far, is marketing. But here, once again, the founders had an ace up their sleeve because they had finally made enough to start buying people's souls. Ed and Bijan likely had a similar experience as me when gambling on RuneScape. See, it wasn't just about the money. Part of the allure was that you were part of the community. It felt fun. All the RuneScape YouTubers were talking about it, doing videos, showing off their wealth. Many of them were hosting in the gambling clans, live streaming it. And then all the other gamblers at the Grand Exchange were chatty. It was like the closest you could get to a real casino online. And they had lived through that too. They knew what they had to do was create a sense of community on stake. And they were going to do that through advertising, but at first they weren't sponsoring super large names or teams. Rather, they targeted micro influencers, people doing crypto videos, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, like any community that had gamblers in it. And it all looked very grassroots, with the influencers organizing collaborative giveaways, different prize challenges, and there was even political event betting promotions, which is kind of innovative because we saw those explode on prediction markets within the last couple of years. All the while, Ed and Bijan were personally engaging with users via a weekly live stream, raffles, bonuses, and giveaways, giving the impression that Stake was a community rather than a big corporation trying to suck you dry of all your money, even though that's like really what it's all about. It really felt like you were more than a customer. And while I'm sure this was all very carefully calculated, one thing that really worked is that Ed has always naturally been an influencer. He was doing YouTube before any of this, and today he's still hosting different podcasts and things related to the Stake community, even though some of them basically get no views, while Bijan is now much less public. Either way, this advertising push worked really well. But something was about to happen that would blow Stake into the stratosphere. COVID-19. With everyone stuck at home, Stake decided to act fast. By now, they had saturated niche online communities. They had built a massive team, knew the market, and most important of all, they had enormous amounts of money to throw around. They were in a position to scale exponentially. They start booking some of the biggest talent contracts in history. In February 2021, Israel Adesanya, the UFC middleweight champion, became Stake's first big sports ambassador. In March 2021, Stake became the UFC's major sport betting partner in Asia and Latin America, securing placement in the UFC octagons. In July 2021, Watford Football Club signed a shirt sponsorship deal reportedly worth £5 million a year, which is the most money the club had ever made from a shirt deal. By the end of 2021, Stake claimed to have processed 5 billion bets on the platform, and its revenue grew 6 times from 2019 to 2021. But in March of 2022, things went just a little too far, and it's probably the reason why a lot of everyday people were exposed to Stake.
This is my alter ego. Anita Maxwin. Anita Maxwin.
You see, Stake made Drake an offer he couldn't refuse, $100 million a year to partner with them, live streaming his gambling sessions, in which he would act absurd while losing or winning millions of dollars every stream. It's really absurd how they were now in a position to have enough money to be able to convince Drake to sign on and stream gambling for them. Along with this partnership, they started giving out deals to really big live streamers like XQC, Trainwrecks TV, and Aiden Ross, offering the same sorts of life-changing money to do Stake-sponsored gambling on Twitch TV. And with this new massive marketing push, they decided it was finally time to expand into the biggest market they had yet to tap, the United States. See, there was a problem. Real money online gambling in the United States is regulated state by state, and Stake didn't have licenses for most states. So instead of trying to get the laws changed, lobbying legislators, they were going to spin up a new version of Stake, a separate platform still housed under the same brand name, just a different domain, built to conform to sweepstakes law. Users could earn free tokens just for signing up or logging in. That's what makes it a sweepstake. It meant that the site technically offered a no purchase necessary way to play. Yet at the same time, players could buy bundles of virtual coins with a secondary currency included as a bonus that could be used to gamble with, and then later used to redeem cash prizes. This is like a legal gray area basically. It's just a way to have an online casino without calling it an online casino that United States customers could gamble on. And this strategy worked. It skyrocketed stakes revenue from hundreds of millions a year into the billions. But maybe they had flown a little too close to the sun with all these streamers because they were about to get burned in a big way. In September 2022, popular streamers including Pokimane and Mizkif threatened to strike over all the gambling content on Twitch. This came on the head of It's Slicker scamming other streamers out of money to fund his gambling addiction. By October, they had gained so much momentum that Twitch was forced to respond. On October 18th, 2022, Twitch put in place a ban on streaming gambling sites that weren't, quote, licensed in the US or other jurisdictions that provide sufficient consumer protections. Stake was specifically listed as a prohibited site. Live streams have become a fundamental pillar of their marketing mix. Without them, the bottom line would suffer, and so Ed and Bijan needed a plan. And once again, here is where their FU amounts of money come into play. Instead of rolling over after getting kicked off of Twitch, they decided to create their own streaming platform called Kick to compete. Not more than a month after the ban, in November 2022, they had already registered Kick Streaming Ltd in Australia, and by December, they were live. Kick positioned itself as a creator-friendly alternative to Twitch with a revolutionary 95-5 subscription revenue split, basically completely undercutting Twitch's 50-50 revenue split monopoly. But still, this was a massive gamble, even for Ed and Bijan. If they were going to steal market share from Twitch, owned by Amazon, it was going to take a monstrous amount of money and paying the biggest streamers in the world to change platforms. Even the 95-5 split wasn't enough, because to organically attract streamers, they needed an audience on Kick. But to attract an audience, they needed streamers. They decided the best way to acquire this was by signing deals with the biggest streamers on the planet, people with audiences loyal enough to follow them anywhere. Trainwreck's TV was one of the earliest. It made sense, he was streaming a ton of gambling content for Stake on Twitch before the rule change. But this was maybe not the best move, because it really cemented in people's heads that Kick was just a way for them to indirectly funnel people into Stake. This was going to come back to bite them in a big way a little later. But for now, their next deal was with Aiden Ross. The exact numbers for all of these deals isn't known, but there's speculation it was $150 million on a 2-year deal. Aiden has come out and said that calculating the deal amount actually isn't so clear because he's paid on an hourly rate. Every hour that he streams is some 5-figure amount that he earns. Come June, they signed XQC on a reported 2-year deal worth $70 million up to $100 million if he hits certain incentives. XQC's agent would later talk about how the deal is non-exclusive and called it one of the biggest talent deals ever. And that non-exclusive bit is important because it means that he could still stream on Twitch. See, they discovered it was actually better if these live streamers went live on Twitch for a couple of hours first and then switched the stream over to Kick, encouraging their audiences to move. It worked really well. From here, they signed even more big names. Many of these you probably recognize. And of course, with their RuneScape background, they signed Autoblock. And from here, they started niching down into the categories that each of these streamers represent, signing still big but less prominent creators to try and take over entire categories from Twitch. They were tossing around insane amounts of money to make this happen. And in its first year, Kick racked up 779 million hours watched and reached 141,000 monthly active channels. But lurking in the background of all of this was still something keeping many streamers away from making an organic switch. Like, it makes sense that these big guys would change over when offered life-changing amounts of money. But for all the little guys, the slots and casino category, they realize it's a funnel into Stake. According to Stream Charts, in the first year, that category accounted for 168 million of those hours watched, making it the second most popular category, only outwatched by the Just Chatting section. And so all these streamers still on Twitch, they're worried about what their audience will think, worried about exploiting their audience. And so if Kick is truly going to take over, somehow they would have to normalize their gambling content in the process. But doing this without having regulators kick back isn't so easy, nor should it be. This brings us to today. They've released a Kick Creator Incentive Program, which pays any streamer over 50 concurrent viewers an hourly deal, opening the wallet to incentivize even the smaller guys to come over. And they've been trying to improve the platform from a technical standpoint to meet criticism or add things that they were missing that Twitch had. It really seems like Kick might just beat Twitch out in the end, because Twitch seems to get a lot of criticism, but they're complacent, unwilling to fix it, and they have a worse creator compensation program, whereas Kick is willing to innovate, willing to pay to get the users over. But all of this attention has come with some downsides. Regulators are looking at them harder than ever, and with talent comes the drama. One marketing tactic that has come under criticism recently was all the TikToks and short-form content featuring stake. I'm sure you've seen these. It happens with other gambling websites too. One person that didn't find that funny was regulators noting that there was no FTC disclosures like #ad on these uploads. And there's a lot at stake here if they don't comply with these regulations. For example, at the beginning of 2025, the UK Gambling Commission, who has actively been trying to crack down on irresponsible gambling ads, especially those that are aimed at students or young adults, when a stake branded video with the adult film actress Bonnie Blue got posted featuring her outside of Nottingham Trent University, promising to sleep with 180 of the students, went viral. It triggered them to finally do something. Stake was operating in the UK through a white label arrangement with TGP Europe, but the UK still held Stake liable for this marketing blunder, and knowing the UK government was now on them, Stake suddenly announced a strategic decision to leave the UK market and exit all white label deals entirely, losing significant market share. Meanwhile, Drake, reportedly again on a $100 million a year deal to stream, promote, and bet on Stake, started beefing with Eddie. Drake deleted his Kick account out of the blue, scrubbed Stake from his public image, and at one point flat out called Ed a snake. For a company whose entire brand has been built on celebrity trust, like this has to hurt their reputation. And all that crypto they're pulling in, it's put a target on their back for hackers. In September of 2023, the Lazarus Group, a North Korean state-backed hacker group, broke into Stake's hot wallets and stole almost $41 million worth of crypto. The hack amounted to 14% of all crypto stolen that year. Stake, to their credit, kept the site running and covered any money that the users lost, but this just adds to the trouble of running the business. But the main threat is still regulators and researchers, some worried about Kick's gambling category, especially how easy it is for kids to watch streams that are basically live ads for casinos. Greece has already said that the site's gambling streams meant it should be completely off limits. Australian regulators even raised the question of whether platforms like Kick were effectively acting as unlicensed gambling advertising services. But as of now, there's no public conclusion or enforcement. At the same time, lawsuits have been filed against Drake, Aiden Ross, other streamers, and Stake itself, claiming that the promotions of Stake and Stake.us were done in a dishonest way by allegedly funding the insane gambling streams, downplaying the risk associated with gambling, and urging fans, including teenagers, to join and bet. And because of all this, slowly the way Stake and Kick operate has started to change. In early 2025, Stake and Kick started rolling out new, responsible gambling measures. First, they announced a stricter age and ID verification. Now you have to prove that you're actually over 18 instead of just promising that you are. Kick also removed hourly payouts for new streamers in the slots and casino category, like trying to distance themselves from that perception. And I think that's clear because this is their biggest operational risk. Obviously, Kick is funneling people into Stake through the slots and casino category, and Kick is funded on the back end by the profits of Stake. It's not a sustainable business otherwise. And so if regulators kick back, say that they have to remove the category because it is advertising, then Kick no longer is a profitable business and it will close, and then Stake will make less money. And so they need to get up to regulation. They need to do these small changes to try to appease the regulators without actually destroying their funnel. But no matter what happens, it seems Ed and Bijan are working on a backup plan. Through EasyGo, they quietly acquired a major ownership position in PointsBet, a traditional, publicly listed Australian bookmaker. This is a fully licensed, regulated sportsbook operating inside one of the strictest gambling markets in the world. PointsBet was previously in the US market too, but exited, selling its American operations to Fanatics after struggling to compete with giants like FanDuel. That made the company very attractive, likely to Ed and Bijan, because number one, most importantly, the hardest part was done. They were compliant, but number two, they were more affordable. FanDuel because they were kind of a faltering company. And Ed and Bijan, they've got their whole team that they've built to run Stake and Kick. If they could focus that team on FanDuel, they could likely prop it up, bolster it into a bigger business. But really, what this all means is that if regulators crack down hard on crypto casinos, they will already be waiting on the other side in the clean, regulated, respectable world of traditional sports betting. If that isn't enough, they have also acquired a significant percentage of Hacksaw Gaming, the slots provider hosted in most online casinos, including Stake. This means that even if another online casino steals a bunch of the market share, they're likely still going to be profiting from it. And the reason they can do all of this is simple. The money is ridiculous. According to reporting, Stake's gambling revenue has exploded. In 2020, around 100 million. In 2021, over 1.2 billion. 2022, roughly 2.6 billion. And in 2024, estimates put it closing in on $4.7 billion. In just over a decade, they've gone from gambling RuneScape Gold to building one of the largest online gambling operations in the world, rivaling publicly traded giants like DraftKings and 888, and reportedly acquiring billions of dollars in personal wealth along the way. As CoffeeZilla put it, there's too much money to stop this. It's part of why gambling seems to be built into everything today. Shout out to War Thunder again for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to check out War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile using my links in the pinned comment or video description. Those of you who are new or haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and console, including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. Thank you, War Thunder.